Hi, everyone, and welcome to our Tuesday Tech Talk series with Fractional Talent. Fractional Talent is a community of senior technology and business experts who collaborate to leverage their collective strengths to provide innovative and effective solutions to clients' challenges. We connect companies with top talent through flexible advisory and project-based services to help you design, adapt, integrate, upgrade, and automate technology to enhance your business operations, drive growth, scale efficiently, and increase profitability. We're excited to introduce our Tech Talk series, a short, insightful session with some industry experts on industry relevant topics and market trends. Today's Tech Talk is strategy for scaling technology, overcoming the 5 biggest challenges small to mid-sized businesses face in right-sizing security applications and infrastructure, with 2 of our FTN experts, Rami and Greg. Rami thrives at the intersection of cybersecurity and risk management, where he can help organizations navigate the complexities of today's landscape. He is passionate about responsible AI and the implications for security and data privacy practices. Rami comes from a governance, risk management, security, and compliance perspective on how to approach new technology adoption. Greg is an IT executive with extensive experience leading global technology initiatives across biotech, healthcare, finance, manufacturing, and IT services sectors. Recognized for managing digital transformations and optimizing cloud hybrid infrastructures, spearheading custom platform development projects, Greg has proven experience in helping improve IT security, automate processes, and streamline business workflows to create business value and enhance the lives of customers. I will be monitoring the chat and have Rami and Greg answer questions at the end. But for now, please take it away, Greg.
Thanks, Kate. And as she said, we are here to talk about some of the challenges that companies face when they grow within their technology teams. And as companies grow, one of the big things that you have to think about, and that I see often, is trying to figure out how to pick technology. As you grow, some of the solutions that you have aren't necessarily the ones that you should have. You may have to grow into something else. And so as we talk about the five different elements that you really need to think about as you grow, the first one is, how do you choose that right technology? What does that look like? And the first thing to say really is there is no one size fits all for this. You have to be comfortable with these different solutions, especially as you grow. And really the hybrid model is the easiest model to sort of wrap your head around. Obviously, the buy and build scenarios all come into place. Sometimes you want to buy your technology and just license software off the shelf. Other times, though, you really do want to build that in-house with expertise that you hold on to. You're not going to really be able to gravitate one towards the other. You can try, but as you grow, the complexity of your organization typically will kick you into the hybrid model. And then the other thing that I really recommend for companies all the time, as you grow, and this can be even medium-sized companies that grow to be big, is to stay small as long as you can. And I don't mean small in terms of, volume. I mean small in terms of cost of licenses, lengthy implementations, and then which drive more complexity into your organization. What you really want is you want your technology team to be a driver of value. You don't want them to be an inhibitor to your growth. And the way to do that is to limit the complexity. And the way to do that is to try to stay small. So Rami, once a company understands how to pick the right technology as they grow, what things should they be thinking about in terms of securing that technology?
Yeah, awesome. Thank you, Kate and Greg, for kicking it off. Glad to be here today. So, Greg, I'll take it from where you left. Once you're looking at technology and growing a company, your technology footprint inevitably will grow over time. In today's age, everything runs on technology. So one of the things I would mention in terms of security, there's a couple of things I will mention. Obviously, security is a huge topic, but one thing is the attack surface management, right? So attack surface in security terms is anything that's exposed out from your company, either on the internet or in any other way, that can be attacked from someone outside the company. So managing that surface is key. And the key there is knowing where your assets are and how you place them and what they're used for. so you're not surprised by things like a breach in a remote access server that you maybe didn't even realize existed, right? Similarly, as you're growing and scaling your network or ecosystem of suppliers and maybe partners grows, right? So the supply chain vulnerabilities become more prevalent. So you got to manage your dependencies on vendors. You have to be able to assess the risk with these third parties and really understand what their controls are. Um, so in effect, you're not just managing your network and your threats and vulnerabilities. You also have to make sure anything in your ecosystem is also protected. And the third thing I'll mention quickly is the insider threats and employee security awareness. So as you're growing, you're not a small a few group of acquaintances or friends anymore. You're getting to that stage where you're the enterprise, and now you have to manage from the policies and procedures and standards, and that's where the employee security awareness becomes even more important. So I would say, as one tip I can give here is, as you're growing, even when you're small, think about the frameworks that you're going to use from a security perspective. Align yourselves to those frameworks and measure your controls early on so that you can start to assess and baseline yourself on where you are and how you're improving those controls over time. If you use, for example, cloud computing a lot, you could do the Cloud Security Alliance. There's a whole bunch of frameworks from NIST out there that you can adopt. So because if you don't manage a lot of that stuff, you end up with situations like Snowflake had like a huge breach last year where it was something as simple as not using multi-factor authentication, right? So it's just not keeping an eye on those little things that sometimes can trickle into big issues. So Greg, having talked a little bit about security, why don't we kind of get to the next point where you've adopted the technologies, now you're thinking about security and frameworks. What are some of the things that companies should be thinking about in terms of the governance and the life cycle of this technology, if you want to take that?
Yeah, it's a great point. I mean, I think once you choose technology, once you secure it and think about the security elements that you just mentioned, now you have to govern all of this stuff, right? And especially as you grow, that governance becomes more complex. Most companies have some sort of SDLC in place, right? Some sort of path that they use to plan, to pay for, to implement the technology. And one of the challenges I often see is as you grow and you're trying to solve different problems, companies will tend to forget what the purpose and what the scope. Why are they using a new technology? Why are you putting something in? And even more importantly, what is the customer base for that? Who's using the technology? Who are those stakeholders? Oftentimes, you're just trying to solve a problem. It's sort of a break fix mentality. And so that's a big challenge to get out of that mindset and really get more into clearly defining what is the reason why, what's the purpose for us using this specific technology, and then who's going to use it, right? And then the other thing that comes with that as you govern is measuring the success of implementations and measuring the success long term of applications and software that you put into the environment. You would think it would be pretty obvious that you would want to do this. Amazingly, most companies that I've worked with and for, they don't. Measuring success is really not something that is thought about, and it's definitely not thought about early. So one of the suggestions I have and always use is to work with stakeholders to define those success metrics early on. And that really helps do a couple of things. It keeps you from having to come back and understand, hey, is this really working now? When you grow, that becomes a real challenge. Are the same solutions that you've had, are they really the ones you should have? And how do you know if you don't define those metrics? So this is a big sort of important thing to do, and do it early on and do it with stakeholders, right? That's the other sort of pitfall I think technology teams get into is they forget to go talk to their stakeholders and they try to develop some of these metrics on their own. And that's really not a good thing to do, right? You really want to have your sponsors and your stakeholders involved and at the table, and you want to do it as early as you can so the governance is very tight as you go forward. So, Rami, one of the areas that we haven't looked at yet that maybe you can talk about is regulatory compliance or just compliance in general with a growing company. What do companies need to focus on in that area as they grow?
Right. No, happy to cover that. And you're absolutely right. If you can't measure things, Greg, you can't really manage them, right? So you're right on with that. Now, as you're growing, you have to think about the compliance and regulatory requirements as well. Um, Now, if you have any sort of data collection, processing, or even dissemination, you may not realize sometimes as a company what kinds of regulations kick in, what you have to abide by. So it's really important to kind of keep an eye on what kind of data processing you're doing and even in your ecosystem with your suppliers and partners. So things like HIPAA, for example, if you're dealing with any kind of health data, HIPAA might kick in, or if you're dealing with card information, even taking payments, there might be some PCI implications for either you or your vendors. The other thing I would mention is compliance. Sometimes we think of as just compliance with laws, but it doesn't have to be only that, because sometimes I do see smaller companies uh, getting into this dilemma of not being able to show their security to their customers, not being able to build that trust. So things like having a SOC 2 type 2, where you are complying with that framework and being able to get that external audit to show to your clients, goes a long way in building that trust. Um, as a side note, another interesting area that I'm working on now is the cybersecurity maturity model certification, which is a requirement now for DoD contractors, right? So if you're working with the government, if you're working with the Department of Defense in any way, either as a direct contractor or sub, you have to comply with those CMMC requirements. So you gotta start thinking about that kind of stuff early. And goes without saying, if you don't meet those requirements and fail to put in the right security controls, you could be hit by financial penalties, but also you could be losing revenue from potential customers that you could be getting if you do have a demonstrated level of security. So these are some of the things I think you should be thinking about. What I would suggest is, as kind of a tip here, is as you're building your strategies and your roadmaps, don't forget to include security and risk management and compliance in those roadmaps, because oftentimes it's an afterthought, and we're talking about technology roadmaps, but we don't realize what the implications on risk are. Um, so we've talked about so far four key areas, Greg, but a lot of this is done by humans and individuals and people and employees, right? So maybe as a final area, why don't you walk us through some of the best practices for setting up teams and managing teams?
Yeah, it's a great point. I mean, obviously, as you grow, you're going to grow the technology team in all likelihood as well. And so, how do you do that, right? What does that look like? And I think one of the key components there, and one of the challenges that companies face, is constantly figuring out the right balance between insourcing and outsourcing. How much do you do on your own versus how much do you leverage, in many cases, really good partners in your ecosystem to do that? And I think the key thing that you want to think about, and that I often tell companies to really pay attention to as they grow, but even before they grow, is understanding this idea that you don't have to be an expert at everything. You want to define, not only for your company, but for your technology team, what are your core competencies? And in this day and age, it's so much easier to find targeted, specialized partners to help you do whatever it may be that you want to do, whether it's software engineering or AI, or even just something as rote as help desk and service desk management that aren't core competencies to what you want to be doing as a technology team or as a company. And so finding that balance is important, and understanding what you want to be good at. Often companies will just try to reach out to partners or decide they want to carry everything on their own without understanding what they want to be good at. I think you want to make sure you figure that out first. What do we want our core competency to be before you then go figure out how you want to structure your technology team. And so, Rami, what are some other elements when you're building a technology team as a company grows that these companies should be thinking about?
Yeah. See, the way I think about it, Greg, is a lot of times when companies are started, and we hear about this all the time, is the focus on having the minimum viable product, right? The MVP. And the focus is only do what you're required to do to show the value. And that's great at the beginning stages of the companies. But as you're growing, that mindset has to slowly shift as well, because doing the minimum may not be sufficient anymore, right? The other thing I would say is in the beginning, when companies are small, you need generalists in a lot of places, and especially in technology, you need the generalists because you want people to wear different hats. And that's great. That's a great thing to have for all sizes of companies. However, security has become very complex. And what I would say is don't just rely on technology generalists to do security, because just like we get experts in other areas, as you grow, your requirement for expertise grows as well. The other kind of benefit you get from a security and risk perspective, touching on a couple of previous points we covered in terms of complexity of security as well as compliance and regulatory requirements. In a lot of these security frameworks and even regulatory frameworks, having an independent view of your security or risk posture becomes a requirement, right? So it's kind of you get two in one here, because you get the independent validation of your security controls by a third party, and you hit kind of two things at once. So obviously the implications of not doing this correctly is that if you're not training your users to hit the right balance between security and usability, you run into issues, because one of the things we often say in the security space is that up to 95% of the flaws we see are preventable, right? These are either configuration issues or these are user errors. So some of the things we mentioned in this talk go a long way in preventing those. Obviously, I just want to quickly mention AI in security as well, because you can use AI now for enhancing not just your security monitoring, but your threat detection and even compliance management. So that's a key. And again, where I would close, Greg, before I turn over to Kate, is uh, don't try to do everything yourself, especially when it's not your core, right? So when it comes to developing your roadmaps or strategies, or something tactical as having a vulnerability assessment or a risk assessment, reach out to your partners and experts that can maybe help you with that. So with that, Kate, why don't I turn it over to you to get us across the finish line.
Yeah. Thank you, Greg and Rami. This was great. You shared a lot of great insights. And I think this is the special sauce for Fractional Talent is we have global enterprise level technology and business executives that are able to bring that knowledge and expertise down to a growing, scaling, small to medium business. So they have already been through some of these bigger company challenges and they can bring that expertise to this growing company. So this is great. I learned a lot. Hopefully you all learned a lot as well. If your organization is growing and struggling with some of these challenges, right? How to scale your technology to enterprise level applications and security and infrastructure. Hopefully we've shared some insights that has helped your growing business think about new ways to optimize technology investments and enhance security without overspending. We invite you to reach out to us here at Fractional Talent and talk to one of our experts and get some help and guidance. Again, we offer flexible service arrangements from advisory to project-based consulting services to meet you where you and your organization are at with regards to resource, timeline, and budget constraints. You can follow us on LinkedIn, YouTube, and our website, fractionaltalent.io. And we'll see you next week for our next Tuesday Tech Talk. Thank you.